Mahiro Yasaka, a pathetic weakling with a life more pathetic like a poorly written NPC, suddenly gets approached by some deities who claim to have fallen for him. A loser like bro literally pulled gods as bitches, and then there's you. Stay tuned to find out how his entire life turns around. On his way home from school, Mahiro Yasaka suddenly starts getting chased by a mysterious creature as the sky turns red. He meets a dead end, and the only thing he can do at this point is call out to Batman to come and save him. Of course, Batman won't be able to save him because I can only be in one place at a time, and Gotham needs me. As the creature slowly approaches him, he realizes he's cooked since I can't be there. Then suddenly, somebody appears and easily takes down the beast. The person then goes full otaku weirdo and introduces herself as Nyaruko, the chaos that always crawls up to you with a smile. The next morning, in Mahiro's apartment, Nyaruko happens to have made him breakfast. She then further explains to him that she is an alien who has come to Earth to protect its people since Batman is only limited to Gotham. Ouch. She tells him her main objective is protecting him personally, since he somehow happens to be a monster magnet. Except instead of dust bunnies, he attracts creepy creatures. Later that day, Mahiro takes Nyaruko to an anime shop where she loses it at the sight of their excellent shoujo collection. He asks how and why she has taken a weird interest in stuff like these, and she replies that even though she got sent on a mission, she seems to have side quests of her own too. She adds that Earth's entertainment happens to be the best in the whole universe, and that's why the other deities of the Cthulhu mythos want to come as well. Before leaving the store, she buys a couple of erotica novels, creeping Mahiro out. On their way back home, Nyaruko tells Mahiro that the main reason she agreed to the mission was because she fell for him at first sight. She then becomes super clingy, giving him the Ike. Suddenly, a monster appears, interrupting their Naruto Sasuke moment. The monster charges at them, and Nyaruko, being as ruthless as ever, kicks it right in the balls. Believe me, you'd feel it too. Afterward, she easily beats the powerful monster to death with just her bare fists. Later that week, Mahiro goes to school, and just like any other typical anime, Nyaruko gets introduced as a transfer student in his class. She has quite the aura and manages to pull in more people than Da Baby at his last concert. Without hesitating, she tells the whole class she's Mahiro's soulmate, and that he's the only reason she transferred to the school in the first place. As expected, all their classmates believe, and Mahiro suddenly gets cornered into doing just what Nyaruko wants. Later that day during class activities, another mysterious creature appears outside the school building. So Nyaruko and Mahiro make excuses to go to the school infirmary while luring it to the rooftop. It's a good thing no one else can see the creepy creatures. At the rooftop, Nyaruko is feeling fruity, so she summons one of her pet dragons to do the fighting. As unfortunately predicted, the pet dragon gets an unfair share of ass whooping, so she has to step in. She easily takes it down. By the way, Mahiro reminisces about his new reality with the weird alien girl while walking home with her from school. This time around, a bunch of the creepy aliens approach them, and as usual, Nyaruko obliterates them effortlessly. She suddenly turns to him and tells him it's finally time to go on the offensive. Bro's tripping, so he asks what she means. She explains that the stars have at last aligned. She points to the sky, and Mahiro is shocked to see that the flow of time has stopped. She then suddenly spews out to him that Arlai shall rise to the surface. Later, Mahiro and Nyaruko ride a water creature which she calls the Arlai Express Water Taxi Dragon. For some strange reason, they seem to have put up a straw hat banner. Mahiro asks where they're headed, and Nyaruko replies that they're headed to Arlai to crush the enemy base. They are then joined by some other sea creatures who accompany them to the city. On getting there, Mahiro discovers that it is a city of monsters because he seems to be the only human around. As they proceed towards a black castle in the center of the city, Nyaruko hands Mahiro protective gear in case of any danger. Arriving inside the castle, they are confronted by an overconfident bearded man named Nodens. He's obviously the boss of the area. Nodens tells them it's finally time for the dark auction to begin. The lights then switch on, and it is revealed that they have just walked into the center of a battlefield, where everyone has been patiently waiting for them. A girl named Sithua suddenly jumps out and starts attacking Nyaruko. For the thrill of it, Nodens transfers the two girls to a separate dimension, where one of them is set to get their ass kicked. Sithua, who has always been known to be Nyaruko's sworn enemy, starts attacking. Nyaruko tries to fend her off with her own attacks, but for some reason, they seem pretty weak and almost ineffective against Sithua. Sithua manages to overpower her, and in a plot worthy of any shoujo anime, tries to do erotic things to her. Nyaruko, trying to process the unexpected twist, asks what the heck is going on, and Sithua tells her she has always had a crush on her. Okay, this anime has started to take a different twist. Nyaruko yells at her in a K-drama manner to stop because her heart already belongs to someone else. Sithua asks if it's the human boy and Nyaruko confirms it. Sithua then gets angry and swears to obliterate Mahiro. Hearing this, Nyaruko snaps from where she's being restrained and transforms into a magical girl mech form and reveals that she normally doesn't like to fight in her true form, but just like Vin Diesel, she'd do anything for family, I mean love. She does a dramatic Power Rangers dance and then knocks Sithua out with a single attack. Mahiro, who is being restrained by Nodens, opens the protective charm Nyaruko gave him. Nyaruko literally appears like a knight in shining armor to save him. Nodens asks what she did with Sithua and Nyaruko replies that she defeated her easily like one of the monsters that don't even last till the opening credit. Flustered, Nodens tries to retreat but Nyaruko blocks him off and demands an explanation. He then reveals that the whole incident was like a lesbian smut reality show fantasy he was planning, which Nyaruko already ruined. Nyaruko punches his guts out upon hearing him blab. Later, Mahiro and Nyaruko head back to the human city where she tells him she's returning since her work is already done. She suddenly disappears and time finally plays. Mahiro then returns home and meets her waiting for him in an apron. She tells him to think again if he actually thought for a moment that she would leave him for real. Nyaruko resumes her daily activity of being a super clingy weirdo to Mahiro. This time, she comes up with her own Oni-chan fantasy, but Mahiro turns her down quicker than your crush did to you. On the topic, he asks if Nyarlathotepans like her have actual siblings, and she replies that they do. Minutes later, they head off to school, leaving Shantak, Nyaruko's pet dragon, behind to watch the house. While they head out, a strange man watches them from a distance and announces that he's going to make sure he brings on Nyaruko's downfall. Arriving at school, Mahiro and Nyaruko get informed about the new transfer student said to be joining them. The student then enters and introduces herself. All the students seem amazed at her beauty. Well, except Mahiro and Nyaruko, who can't seem to process why the heck Sithua is standing before them in a school uniform. They drag her out and ask her purpose, but she just keeps being as clings as ever to Nyaruko. You reap what you sow, I guess. Nyaruko gives her a knock which takes her head back to factory settings, so she tells them she works for the Platery Defense Organization now and she has been sent on a mission to protect the remaining gods of the Dreamland from a potential god slayer. She then turns to Mahiro and tells him if he assists her with the mission, she'll take Nyaruko back with her to the Planetary Defense Organization. Like someone who's desperate to get rid of a bug, he agrees without hesitancy. While Nyaruko yaps about it not being fair, the same strange man watches them in the school hallway from the rooftop of a very distant movie. I bet his eyes were made by Samsung to be able to see that far off. I'll just refer to him as Stalker-kun from here on. From where Stalker-kun is standing, he gets reported to the police as an underwear thief, so they chase after him. He then sneaks into the high school to take solace. Outside the school building, Stalker-kun decides to pull a Tobey Maguire move and starts crawling up the walls of the building to get a better stalking view. He manages to crawl up to where Nyaruko is, but Nyaruko, who is pissed at Sithua's forceful clinginess, launches an attack at her, which she dodges. Just like you predicted, it hits Stalker-kun right in the face and sends him crashing blocks away. Later during lunch break, Sithua follows Nyaruko and Mahiro to the rooftop and tries to eat the lunch she prepared for him. Suddenly, the sky turns red and a bunch of ugly creatures appear before them. One of them manages to hurt Mahiro, so Nyaruko summons a chainsaw and denjis her way through them for laying a hand on her sweetheart, while Sithua charges down at Stalker-kun, who happens to be the mastermind behind the raid. Yeah, she whoops his ass. Later that day, Stalker-kun still watches Nyaruko as she heads home. This time, a pathetic backstory is shown, which reveals him to be her weak older brother who has always been compared to her for being such a loser, where he made up his mind that the only way to put an end to his misery is by ending her. Nyaruko and Sithua follow Mahiro home and refuse to leave. Minutes later, Mahiro receives a call from his mom, who informs him she cut her honeymoon with his dad short because she was worried about him and she'll be home in 40 seconds. Panicking, Mahiro decides to kick the two girls out and run an emergency cleaning on the house. He meets the girls in the living room again, so he tries to drag them out, but they resist. His mother then suddenly walks in and sees her son in a not-so-describable position with two girls. Mahiro tries to explain to his mom to not get the wrong idea, and that it was just a misunderstanding. The two girls then introduce themselves, with Nyaruko referring to herself as Mahiro's wife and Sithua referring to herself as Nyaruko's wife. It's pretty complicated. Mahiro's mother then immediately gets cautious and brings out a weapon from nowhere like a spy and points it at them, and they immediately explain that they are here to protect him and not hurt him. She confirms this from Mahiro before putting the weapon down. Confused, Mahiro asks for an explanation, so she tells him the secret she has been keeping from him his entire life. She is a deity hunter. Mahiro asks where his father is, and she tells him he decided to stay at his office for a while to make up for the days he had slacked off. The girls ask if she's fine with them staying at their house, and she agrees with it since they're on a mission to protect the Earth. Mahiro sighs and decides to prepare dinner for them, but Nyaruko just won't give him breathing space, so she follows him into the kitchen to resume her perversions. Sithua, on the other hand, plays video games with Mahiro's mom in the living room. Something's definitely off about this family because they seem to be mixing up their roles. At this point, I won't be surprised if the father suddenly comes in and starts doing the laundry. The following morning, the girls get into a form of argument, so Mahiro's mom tries to come in to intervene, but the girls get so intimidated that they dash off to school without waiting for Mahiro. On his way to school, a little girl bumps into him. She apologizes for bumping into him, but Mahiro, determined not to lose to someone and being a pushover and a goody two-shoes, states that he's equally at fault for not paying attention to his surroundings too. After agreeing to share the blame, the girl calls him a nice guy and runs off. Heading to school, he runs into Nyaruko and Sithua posing like two oversized sumo wrestlers against each other. He just ignores the two weirdos and heads to class. Later on in class, Nyaruko meets up with Tamao, a friend, for tips on how to win a boy over. During the lunch break, she follows him to the rooftop, with Sithua following her to try to offer him food, but he rejects it as usual. During closing hours, Mahiro sneaks out to avoid the girls and ends up running into the same little girl from earlier. She tells him she needs his help in looking for someone, so he decides to treat her to a meal in a fancy restaurant. Like magnets, the girls show up in no time and identify the little girl Haster, a fellow alien. Not only did they identify her as the great deity of wind, but they also revealed that the girl was a boy. This anime is a lot. The girls ask him what he's doing on Earth, and he reveals he's currently looking for someone named Yasaka Yuriko. That someone happens to be Mahiro's mother. Mahiro tries to find out why Haster is after his mom while he leads him home. Haster then replies that for some reason unknown to him, his father had sent him to locate her. While they walk home, Sithua, who is walking with Nyaruko behind them, comes up with a silly idea, so she pushes Haster towards Mahiro, claiming that they'd make a good couple. No diddy, bro. Nyaruko smacks her and tells her she must be pretty fucked up in the head for holding thoughts like that. Mahiro takes the boy home and his mother arrives immediately from the grocery store. She recognizes Haster as one of Mahiro's friends, so she invites him in for dinner. As Nyaruko tries to explain that the boy is also a deity like them, a woman appears through a portal, grabs Yuriko, and takes her to the roof, where she tells her she has come to take her. Yuriko asks what's going on, and the strange woman whispers something into her ear, so she suddenly agrees to her demands. Nyaruko and Sithua approach her to stop her, but she whispers something into Sithua's ear, which wins her over too. Sithua knocks Nyaruko off the roof, and the woman summons a cybertruck from nowhere, then zooms off into another dimension with the two of them. Mahiro, Nyaruko, and Haster then try to come up with a plan on what to do. Nyaruko calls her boss from the Planetary Defense Organization to track down Sithua's location. I'd have called it PDO for short, but it kind of reminds me of Drake, if you know what I mean. In a few minutes, she's given the exact location, so they all decide to head there. Nyaruko pulls out a ball like she's in a Pokemon match and transforms it into a sort of car, which she claims will take them where they're going. The car seems to meet up to its expectations because it also acts as a submarine while it advances through the water. While they advance, a group of fish monsters approach their vehicle to wreck them, so Nyaruko launches a special attack that blows them up. They then run into a gigantic sea creature which they barely manage to lose, but after finally losing it, a different one appears and gives them the hell they're running from. Their vehicle gets destroyed, but they manage to make it to the place. Mahiro wakes up to see Haster with him, so he assumes Nyaruko has already made advances. Mahiro and Haster get to the castle at the center of this island and meet Nyaruko in a typical Mortal Kombat pose against Sithua. She tells them to go on ahead while she teaches Sithua a lesson. Mahiro and Haster then proceed without her. The two girls exchange hand combats with each other and seem to be equally matched until Nyaruko pulls a shady villain type trick and knocks Sithua down. Sithua then whispers something in her ear, and she seems shocked to hear it. For some reason, they feel we are not worthy enough to know what it is yet. Mahiro and Haster get to a room where Yuriko is assumed to be. They open the door and meet the two ladies working on some high-tech stuff. The lady gets pissed at his desperation to ruin her plans, so she randomly starts revealing that the reason Heister was sent is to steal information about their company's next-generation console. She explains that Heister's father is a board member at a rival game company and is trying to gain intel on their games so as to have the upper hand in an upcoming console war. Nyaruko happens to be a VIP customer who buys and plays all their game series. She gets pulled in to strategize on the upcoming console war. It's pretty cliche. While rambling on in her nerd talk, Lucky, the weird lady, receives a call from her boss, telling her she has been laid off from the game company. In a last pointless effort like a typical villain, she decides to launch the company's secret weapon she has been working on. The sky suddenly turns red and a bunch of monsters approach them. They then discover that the console she is working on does a little tweak to the creatures' heads and kind of draws them in. Nyaruko takes them all down effortlessly, by the way. Sithua then destroys the machine to stop its effect completely. Weeks later, history repeats itself and Heister gets introduced in their class as a transfer student. How is that even possible? Nyaruko later plans a beach trip, involving all of them. The gang goes to the beach and hot springs where Nyaruko makes another daring attempt to seduce Mahiro. To get himself out of the awkward situation, Mahiro bundles Nyaruko to a table like a possessed girl in The Conjuring all through the night. The next morning, Nyaruko still goes ahead to announce to everybody during breakfast that she had the most intense night with Mahiro. Funny enough, Nyaruko seems to be in approval because she can't wait to see her first grandchild. Nyaruko gets more excited and tries to kiss him, but he smashes her face into the wall and storms out in anger. Walking along the beach, he runs into Heister chilling and is about to talk to him, but Nyaruko appears and forcefully leads Mahiro away. She clings onto him like an extra shadow, and even though he tries to sneak away a couple of times, she keeps finding him again. In one of his prison break attempts, he runs into Sithua playing some video games and approaches her for a quick discussion. Later that day, Lucky runs into the squad and reveals that ever since she got kicked out of work, she has taken up a new interest, which is cooking. She offers each of them food, which they all appreciate, except Mahiro, who seems cautious about the alien ingredients used. After the meal, goes for a swim with his friend, Yoichi, who has tagged along on the trip. Their bro time then gets interrupted by Nyaruko, who shows up from nowhere again and rambles on about her weird perversions. Pissed, Mahiro asks her why she follows him everywhere he goes, and she replies that it's because they're lovebirds who are meant to fly everywhere together. She asks if he has a problem with it, and he replies point blank that he doesn't like her. Hearing the truth after a million deaf attempts, Nyaruko gets pale and falls to the ground while Mahiro leaves her to spend some time with his homie. Noticing that Nyaruko doesn't seem to be recovering from this rejection, Nyaruko walks up to Mahiro and tells him he went a little too far, so he should try to cheer her up. He sighs and asks Nyaruko to accompany him to a souvenir shop, which she gladly agrees to. They end up taking a tour of the city together, and the festival is held around the beach. They even visit a shrine where they both make some wishes. I bet you can guess their contradicting wishes. While they walk back, Mahiro asks what she wishes for, and she replies that she wishes they'd be together forever like Jay-Z and Beyonce. I wonder what he was expecting. Nyaruko suddenly stops and turns to him in a serious manner that creeps him the fuck out. She then tells him she has always been acting silly because she doesn't know how to confess her real feelings to him, but she feels he doesn't take her seriously. She looks him in the eyes and tells him she loves him. The following day, Mahiro and the squad take a stroll around the city, so they stumble upon a game console and decide to check it out. Next thing, Mahiro wakes up at home and sees his mom acting all weird as she sends him off to school. On his way to school, Nyaruko bumps into him and starts crying as she gets up and runs away. Getting to school, Mahiro notices that even his school name has changed, but he decides to head in either way. In an unexpected plot, he is then greeted by Sithua, who helps him fix his tie romantically. He also runs into Heister in the hallway, who shows off basketball skills like a real man, as it should be. Now Mahiro is convinced that something is up with this fucked up world. He walks into his classroom and meets Yoichi. His best friend is an AI NPC character with visible text popping in his head. Yoichi greets him and tells him he is the consultant in case he has any issues. Tama walks into the class too and greets him casually. Shortly after, Lucky walks in a nurse outfit and demands to see him in her office, where she tells him he has been pulled into a game along with the others and that the only way to make it out is by falling in love with one of them. After saying this, she immediately starts glitching and tells him her time in the game is up as she vanishes. The involved love options are well aware of the plot too, so they each come up with their plans. Nyaruko approaches Mahiro to move on to the next event by raising all of her flags, Sithua plans on how to hook him up with Haster so Nyaruko can finally be hers. What else can you expect from someone so fucked up? Then Haster seems to be welding forbidden butterflies on his belly towards Mahiro. No diddy, bro. The scenes suddenly start changing like GTA 3 after marking a checkpoint, and Mahiro keeps meeting Nyaruko and Sithua, who are either trying to kiss him or kill him. It suddenly becomes Christmas and the girls and boy each present him a gift. Haster gives him a handmade doll of himself. Sithua gives him a cake and underwear to give to Nyaruko, and Nyaruko goes the extra mile to give him a marriage certificate, which he shreds to pieces immediately. She then tells him she'll be going on hand-to-hand combat with the rest to prove that she's the right one for him. It suddenly becomes Valentine's Day, so they name the battle Bloody Valentines as they proceed with it. Mahiro waits under the tree where the said winner is supposed to meet with him and desperately hopes it's not a dude. Shortly after, Nyaruko shows up and he seems very relieved. They then proceed with the agreed kiss and get transported back to the normal world. Luckily, no one else but Mahiro remembers what happened. The following day, Mahiro wakes up in his bed and sees a random body pillow lying beside him. Without hesitating, he flings it downstairs, knowing fully well that Nyaruko is inside. Later in school, Nyaruko complains to Tamao, her special advisor, about Mahiro being so ruthless to her. When she finally thinks she has a chance, Tamao tells her to keep pressing on if she feels it's working, and she gets excited to carry on with her specialty of clinginess. Since Mahiro's mom has gone for another deity slaying side quest, he decides to go shopping, and his 3 bodyguards accompany him to goof around as usual. While they shop, they randomly stumble into Nodens and Luhi doing side quests to entertain kids. Upon seeing them, the 2 deities get so embarrassed they run away. They discuss the pathetic states of the deities as they head home, but they are suddenly stopped by Tamao, who tells them Earth is in danger and pulls out a kind of device that puts them into a trance. Mahiro wakes up in his room and sees himself standing before himself. Confused, he looks into a mirror and finds out that he has swapped bodies with Nyaruko. He then does this dramatic scream where the camera zooms out to like 3 galaxies away. Credits to the cameraman who never dies, though. The deity who possessed Tamao's body introduced herself as Isuka, who needed their help in saving the world but was too dumb to ask and felt the most effective way to go about it would be to put them in a trance. Mahiro, in Nyaruko's body, asks her to swap their bodies back, and she tells him the machine is currently low and will have to be charged as she runs out of the house while laughing mischievously like a villain. Nyaruko lets her intrusive thoughts win, so she excuses herself to go to the bathroom for some perverted actions while Sithua pins Mahiro down for her explorations. Mahiro is then forced to bundle her up like a goat to be slaughtered. Later that night, Mahiro comes up with a plan that'll take care of his biggest problem, so he writes a legal document in Nyaruko's handwriting, stating that she'll give herself to Sithua once she returns to her own body, and to top it off, he seals it up with her fingerprint to ensure its validity. He then hands it to Sithua, who pledges allegiance to him as her master. The next day, Mahiro only agrees to go to school so as to meet Isuka so she can swap their bodies back. Getting to school, he is shocked to discover she is absent. Smirking exactly like Dio in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, Nyaruko suddenly grabs his hand and leads him to the front of the class, where she publicly announces as Mahiro that he plans to marry Nyaruko. I hope you understand the twist. Mahiro, in Nyaruko's body, realizes that he has already lost all his aura points, so he just hits her in the head for doing that. But she seems to have accomplished her mission already. Isuka suddenly joins them during lunch on the rooftop and reveals that she is famished from having to complete a lot of missions, so they offer her food, which she appreciates. They ask about the device and she tells them they'll have to wait until nighttime before it's charged up enough and fit for use. Noticing that Yoichi is also absent, Mahiro decides to pay him a visit after school. But since he's currently in a different body, Nyaruko gets pulled along and the whole squad ends up going. On getting to his house, they ring the doorbell, but there's no response, so they assume he's not home. As they're about to leave, Yoichi suddenly jumps out through his glass window like John Wick and runs away. Isuka then identifies him to be the extremist, who we somehow have no info on. Shout out to the writer's epic plot arrangement. Anyway, they chase him to a junk site where the sky suddenly turns red. Extremist Kun then introduces himself as Isarubi, who just like Isuka, has come to Earth as a soldier of the Yith, but is on a different mission to exchange the minds of all the Earthlings and the Yiths so that all of Earth's entertainment will belong to the Yith forever. Wow, what a valid reason to want to take over the world. Wait till bro finds out about the Kardashians, though. He summons a huge device from the scraps and Sithua and Haster step forward like Power Rangers to stop him. He then shoots with a device into space to jam up their space abilities. Isuka smirks and tells him she is prepared for this exact moment as she also shoots into space to cancel his technique. He smiles afterward and tells her he prepared for the fact that she'd come prepared as well as he jams their abilities again. Long story short, the two of them go band for band at each other like professional table tennis players until they're both out of moves. He then brings out a chip and inserts it into the huge device and a projection of his boss appears, who slies him by trying to kill him alongside the other Earthlings present with some creepy looking tentacles. They all start fighting back, but evil boss seems some steps ahead. He fires a shot at Mahiro and Nyaruko has to come in to take the shot for him. Mahiro then has the total emotional protagonist moment while he kneels next to his real body on the ground. For some reason, evil boss seems to be watching the whole drama unfold like Dragon Ball villains whenever Goku is trying to power up. Nyaruko suddenly takes advantage of the moment and forces a kiss on Mahiro. She then reveals that the protective charm she handed to him in episode 2 is what shielded her from the impact of the shot. After watching the drama, evil boss decides to shoot another shot at them, and at the same time, Isuka reveals that the swapping device is fully charged too, so she uses it to swap them back at dime minutes. Nyaruko then easily gives evil boss some ass whooping. Isuka decides to take Isurugi back home, leaving Tomoe and Yoichi's bodies back for them. Well, that's what we think, until Tomoe suddenly meets Isuka inside a super ugly Pokemon doll in her house. The following day, Mahiro resumes his daily school activities, but then remembers his lost aura points when he sees his classmates looking at him in a weird manner. Mahiro reminisces about how peaceful his life used to be until recently when a bunch of menaces suddenly attached themselves to him one way or the other. Clingy as ever, Nyaruko asks him what's on his mind, and he suddenly remembers their kissing incident from the previous day, so his face turns completely red. A knock is then heard on the door, and when they check it out, they meet a little girl with blue hair, who is then introduced by her butler, who is in the form of a familiar spirit as Gatanathoa conglomerate. I do hope she's really a girl this time. They put a call through to Mahiro's mother, who tells them to look after the girl until someone comes to pick her up since she's obviously lost. What Nyaruko and her delusional mind interprets is that if she's able to take care of the girl properly, Mahiro's mother will trust her better to bear her son's child, so she goes all out with it, suggesting all sorts of games for them to play together. Her enthusiasm gets cut short by Mahiro, who knocks some sense into her blank skull, telling her the games she's suggesting are erotica games and are not fit for children. Some monster insects Nyaruko had kept for her mysterious dinner suddenly burst out of the fridge and start scattering everywhere, in the quest to take care of them without destroying the house or terrorizing the citizens outside. She brings out a mirror which pulls them into another dimension with some shadow tentacles. Mahiro looks at the mess caused in the house and kicks out Nyaruko, Sithua, and Haster till he finishes cleaning up. He returns to discover that Kafana has made an even bigger mess. Frustrated, he just takes her to the bath and cleans her up before giving her a change of clothes. Afterwards, he prepares a quick meal for her and she falls asleep on his lap after eating. Nyaruko and the rest then arrive and see the girl sleeping on his lap, so they start throwing a tantrum that he has to run away with her to Yoichi's house. They follow him there, so he has to find other places to hide. While trying to escape with the girl, he runs into two creepy monsters with eyes all over. Nyaruko and the girls then arrive afterward and take care of them, since our MC is a useless dude who keeps having people protect him. But in the process, Mahiro and the girl get injured. He gets pissed and flares up at them for making her get injured as he carries her home to tend to her injuries. Later that night, Mahiro gets uncomfortable with how awfully quiet things have suddenly become, but his pride won't let him go out and search for the others, so he just sleeps. The following morning when he wakes up, he is shocked to find out that Gathana is missing. Mahiro is heavily worried about the fact that Gathana is nowhere to be found in the house, but he just concludes that she probably stepped out to grab some food. He decides to go in search of her, but to his surprise, there's nobody in sight on the streets. Confused, he assumes that Nyaruko and the rest are probably the ones trying to pull an Alice in Botherland on him, so he brings out his phone and tries calling them, but no one responds. He then extends his dial process to everyone in his contact list, including his parents, but no one picks up, so he concludes that something is definitely going on. He rushes down to school and checks each class, but there's still no human in sight. He rushes down to the beach where they hang out, but still can't find anyone. Panicking, memories start flooding through his head about the good times he spent with the girls as he heads back to the city. All of a sudden, the sky gets red, and a creepy monster exactly like the one from episode 1 beginning approaches him. The pushover of the main character realizes he's cooked this time because there's no Nyaruko to protect him. While running for his dear life, he remembers the mirror Nyaruko had given him and uses it to suck the monster into another dimension. Githana then approaches him afterward while crying. He embraces her and tries to find out what's going on, but she just keeps apologizing. She admits she's the one that caused the apocalypse, and her butler suddenly shows up and transforms into an extremely ugly monster. Nyaruko then shows up in a creepy manner through the mirror with him and tells him to look into it. A crazy unexpected plot twist then shows that Mahiro is the one who was petrified the whole time. Upon looking into the mirror, he gets freed from the petrification caused by Loiger, the butler, who is revealed to be evil and the one who orchestrated the attack, forcing Gyudaten to grant Mahiro's wish to live alone and steal Earth's entertainment and adult games. The gang works together with the assistance of Yuriko, who suddenly appears and takes him down alongside his creepy minions. After the fight, life goes back to normal with everybody apologizing to each other and living happily ever after.